Caligula was born into military royalty in 12 AD as the third-born son of legendary general Germanicus. He was born Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus, but would forever be known as his nickname Caligula, a name that started off as a cute, affectionate moniker and would later strike fear into the ruling classes of Rome. The name Caligula meant little boots in reference to the mini uniform he wore as a toddler when his father was stationed on the Rhine. The soldiers camped there looked at him affectionately as their camp mascot and gave him the name. His mother Agrippina also carried a powerful lineage. She was a granddaughter of Emperor Augustus. According to the documentary series The Most Evil Men in History, Germanicus returned to Rome triumphantly to the applause of the people in 17 AD. However, he would die under suspicious circumstances only 2 years later with symptoms of poisoning. It was rumoured that Emperor Tiberius had had him assassinated as he was becoming a growing threat to the throne. As stated in Tony Robinson's Romans, Caligula, Germanicus was next in line for the crown. The outspoken Agrippina publicly blamed Tiberius for the death and publicly called for one of her sons to be named heir. She was exiled for treason and she would later die. The sons would be imprisoned, one committing suicide and the other starved to death. Caligula was spared, but arguably suffered a more devastating fate. Left alone under the suspicion of the most powerful man in Rome after losing his mother, father and 2 brothers. This undoubtedly warped his young mind. He was sent to live with his grandmother and great-grandmother, along with his 3 sisters. He allegedly formed an incestuous relationship with his sister Drusilla. Then, at the age of 19, Tiberius summoned him. He lived in servitude under the disgraced emperor who had retired to Capri to live out a lavish and debauched lifestyle, sheltered from the hatred of his people. Caligula had to endure the pain of sucking up to the man that had destroyed his family for 6 long years. Suetonius, Caligula's biographer, stated that this is where he developed his taste for sadism. He enjoyed watching the condemned be punished in front of him. He also began rebuilding his reputation. He married into the powerful family of his wife Junia Claudia, and he formed an alliance with Macro, head of the Praetorian Guard. Macro was also the right-hand man of Tiberius. Macro, in a show of loyalty to Caligula, allowed him to take his wife to bed. Tiberius had planned to name his grandson Gemellus his successor, but he sensed the growing power of Caligula, who had both the support of the people, Macro, and the Roman army. He would therefore give joint leadership to both claimants. But when Tiberius died, the Senate, under the guidance of Macro, threw out Gemellus's claim and Caligula was pronounced emperor. He became the most powerful man in Rome at only 24 years old. The Senate even gave him absolute power to rule. Though loved by the people, he was an unimpressive figure, stick-thin, tall and prematurely balding with sunken eyes. He won over the army by giving them bonuses and gave the people theatre, feasts and games. His first 6 months of rule were a stark change to the tight-fisted Tiberius, and people were delighted. But he suffered a shock illness and his body and mind broke down. He recovered, but became a monster. Gemellus was accused of wishing his death and was forced to kill himself. His father-in-law was accused of treason, and Macro was accused of prostituting his wife. They were also forced to take their lives.
Kyria, arrest Gemellus for treason. Gemellus will die.
It seemed he was clearing house to rule how he wanted without any threat to his position. He began spending vast amounts of the country's wealth on games and events for himself, building his own racetrack and ensuring he won by poisoning his rivals' horses. He wore outlandish clothing and even experimented with cross-dressing. He mocked the Senate by joking he would appoint his horse as a senator, as it was just as smart as they were. He also partook in gladiatorial games, killing his helpless opponents who, armed only with a wooden sword, had no chance of defending themselves. He enjoyed lavish parties dripping with gold, and even drank pearls dissolved in vinegar. He would sleep with anyone from any class, including prisoners, senators' wives, and even his own sisters. He even declared his sister Drusilla a goddess when she died. He banned all games for a period of mourning, and he refused to shave his beard and hair. He developed a strange obsession for women he couldn't have, even stealing his second wife from the altar of her wedding to another man. He clearly cared more about the act of doing this than the woman, as they were divorced weeks later. His next wife was also married. He clearly got off on the power and control of forcibly stealing another man's wife. He began to turn on the Senate. He discovered that they had had a large role in the destruction of his family. He held onto documents to prove this, that he had previously declared to have destroyed. He stated that he would reinstate the treason trials of Tiberius to find out who conspired to kill his parents. However, he would use these treason trials to convict innocent men and steal their wealth and lands to fuel his lavish expenses. He would throw dinner parties for the senators and their wives, picking out one of the wives to sleep with whilst her husband dined. During his reign, he enforced more brutal punishment for prisoners. He instructed guards to make prisoners feel pain, and they were executed on demand in gruesome ways, such as a succession of small cuts. He wanted executions to last as long as possible. Given the striking resemblance and similar behaviours, I believe King Joffrey from Game of Thrones was based on Caligula. He even had a man's tongue cut out for answering back, much like the TV character. He liked to dine whilst watching the torture and execution of prisoners. He even demanded the victims' family members joined him to watch. He forced senators to fight in the arena to humiliate them, tortured and mutilated them for fun. He also regularly mocked the head of the Praetorian Guard. His paranoia ran rampant, and he had his brother-in-law killed and his sisters banished. In 40 AD, he led a bizarre mission to capture Britain. He abandoned the mission at the English Channel, instead gathering seashells to take back to Rome as the spoils of war. When he returned, he demanded to be acknowledged as a living god by the Senate. He used great sums of wealth to build a temple to himself in Rome. He also planned to build a statue of himself in Jerusalem, which enraged the Jewish population. But the statue or his godlike status was not to be. He was ambushed on the way home from the theatre. He was stabbed to death by his own guards, the Senate, and members of his own family. His wife was killed, and his only living heir was dashed against a wall to destroy the bloodline.